What is going on, everybody? It's your boy SK. I'm here with my guy Justin Day, and we
Yo,
got some things
yo.
to talk about, man. We got a couple things to talk about. A couple days after the Super Bowl, Brian Flores officially has his first press conference for the Minnesota Vikings as the defensive coordinator. But before we get down to things, man, you guys may have noticed something a little bit different as far as the name goes. Whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Facebook. Yes, we are rebranding, new logo, new name, new everything. So we got I'm not going to say completely new cast of people. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces, but you're also going to see some new ones too. And you're also not going to see some other faces too. So, so yeah, it's going to be fun, man. We got the band together. We got a good little rock solid family going over here at Purple and SKOL'd Media. So the logo is going to be dropped in a couple days, guys. So be sure to look out for that. And if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube page, Purple and SKOL'd Media, and on Facebook at Purple and SKOL'd Media. We're working on the Twitter and Instagram. Just bear with us for a little bit. But yeah, man, how you feeling about that? Just real quick, and then we're going to talk about Brian Flores and the new defensive coordinator and everything that goes along with that. But how you feeling about the new media, man?
I am excited. You know, it's hard to put into words because I just joined, the previous iteration at the week 3 of last season. And then you guys had said, hey, we're going to have you do a weekly thing on the varsity team, as I used to call it, not the Canadian one. But it's hard to put into words just how much you have done and how much Rap has done to say, you know what, Justin, you got to get outside your comfort zone. You're too good to just sit there and do it like one day a week. And just the amount of people I've come in contact with and the amount of things I've been able to do, I'm even more excited now. What's up, Rap? I'm even more excited now with this new version and this new iteration that you're putting together. And I'm just as grateful as always to be a part of it, man. So once we really start rolling with this thing, particularly when we get into the draft and free agency, it's going to be something because there's going to be a lot of contributions, as you had mentioned, some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So I'm just excited. I mean, I'm just happy to be sitting at the cool kids table, if I'm being honest with you, man. So what's up, Bandino? What's up, Murky? Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. We appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be fun, man. It's definitely gonna be fun, and we're gonna mold this thing to what we really want it to be. And it's gonna take you guys, all the viewers out there, and
Absolutely.
our audience to tap in and interact with us. We're definitely gonna get you guys more involved with our shows, our live podcasts, and everything. So be on the lookout, man. It's gonna be fun. But let's get down to what we really came to talk about. And that's Brian Flores officially having his first press conference as the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator. And if I'm being honest, he didn't reveal very much. I mean,
No.
he didn't say anything very splashy or, hey, this is, something we really got to pinpoint and talk about. There was a few, notes here. First one that really stood out to me was how he talked about the way he blitzes. He says, yes, I'm obviously naturally aggressive. I'm an aggressive coach. If I feel like blitzing, I'm going to blitz. But there's a method to the madness. We're not just blitzing to blitz. And I felt like that was part of our problem last season was we got to a point last year to where we said, hey, we need to start getting pressure on the quarterback. We need to start sending some blitzes. And yes, that's fine and dandy, and that's great, and we all know that we needed to do that. But you got to have a plan when blitzing. You can't just
right.
You can't just go out there and say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to start blitzing. I'm going to send corners. I'm going to send linebackers, safeties. There's got to be, like Brian Flores said, a method to the madness, and also, like he said, purpose to being aggressive. We're not just going out being aggressive for no reason because the fan base says we need to be aggressive or because the fan base says we need to blitz. No, there's a reason why we're doing this. And it's whether it's scheme-wise, whether it's we're setting something up later in the game, whatever it may be, there's got to be a plan behind blitzing and being aggressive. You can't just go out there and wing it like it seemed like we were doing sometimes with Ed Donatel's defense last season. So just off that comment right there, I mean, obviously he's going to say what we want to hear, just like anybody would in their first press conference. But just saying that right there, it gives me a sigh of relief a little bit, because I've had that feeling that last season that was an issue for us.
No, it definitely was. It was funny. I said this. I did a show last night with Mike. I think Harrison Smith blitzed a total of maybe 7 times all season, and it didn't work but one time, because when you're so used to the Mike Zimmer double A gap or having Harrison Smith come on, and then you never do it, and then you show, oh, look at that, Harrison Smith's right up at the line of scrimmage. We haven't seen that all year. I wonder if he's going to blitz right now. Oh, look at that. He did. So part of the problem with Donatel was you didn't blitz nearly enough. And then when you did do it, it's kind of obvious that it's coming here. So to your point about having a plan and not blitzing for blitzing's sake, let's mix it up just a little bit. Let's keep Danielle Hunter pass rushing. No more dropping Danielle Hunter into zone coverage, at least not right away. Let's utilize the players to the best of their ability and not to what best fits into whatever system you're running, good, bad, or indifferent. But yes, I'm very excited to see what Harrison Smith and Danielle Hunter in particular are going to be able to do with this defense, what other players are going to then be able to benefit from that. But to your point, yes, let's not just blitz for the sake of, last year it was, okay, hut, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Oh, ball's already gone. And then that one time where you call out blitz when you're playing, like, okay, everybody knows you're blitzing because you called it out. And that's basically what the Vikings did.
Yeah.
They were playing backyard football, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and calling blitz when they were coming on a blitz because it was just so obvious the times that they were. So that, to me, more than anything else, is even if it does fail the first couple of times, hey, at least we got something going on, and at least we got something, not just sitting back waiting for the world to come to you, because the world came to us in a big way. We got away with it a lot, but at the end of the year, it was just abject failure defensively. So,
yeah, I mean, we all knew what we needed going into this offseason, and I think we all pinpointed Brian Flores as being one of those guys. If he's available, you got to bring him in for an interview, and you don't let him leave the building. Now, we let him leave the building, but that's because he had other opportunities as far as a head coach. Another thing that stood out to me in this press conference, he kept referring to a gut feeling. He referred to it multiple times. The first time he spoke about his gut feeling was his decision between turning down that Arizona head coaching job, which he didn't clarify as far as whether they offered him that job, but he was still in the running for that head coach position. But he said he had a gut feeling that this Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator position would be best off for him and his family. So that's the first example of him using the gut feeling. The other one was the blitzing aspect. When he gets a gut feeling, he's going to blitz. So I kind of like that. You got to have that sense of just that gut reaction. You have plenty of experiences in NFL, whether that be a young coordinator, whether that be a young head coach. You have a lot of experience in this league. So that gut feeling, may come in handy. So I like that he pointed that out. It was a gut feeling to take this defensive coordinator position with the Vikings over the head coaching job for the Arizona Cardinals. So, I mean, just keying on that specific comment right there, it shows that he wants to be here in Minnesota. And he said his kids wanted Minnesota as soon as he came up.
That was the best thing. It was one of the first things he said right off the bat was how much his kids adore Justin Jefferson, and that there's a lot of grittying going on when he told them, I'm accepting this position, and that they were obviously going to let him make whatever choice he was going to make, but that they were very, very happy that he made the choice that he did, which just goes to the power of showing that, hey, when you have a superstar in your house, when we talk about, well, is this player going to want to come here, or is that player want to come here, it also has an effect on the coaching staff as well. And specifically something O'Connell said was, I'm happy to get this guy. He was one of the first guys I reached out to build that championship mentality, talking about a guy who has been a head coach and a guy who was also, a defensive coach for a Super Bowl winning team, that this was the only thing about today is just like, I know probably wasn't possible, but man, it's unfortunate we couldn't have done it this time last year. But having said that, moving forward, I am excited, and I'm excited to see what kind of choices they're going to make. You know, we've been talking about all the free agents, this and that, and who they're going to keep and who they're going to not. Flores is going to have some influence on that, particularly with the defensive players, obviously, but he's going to have a lot of influence on who's going to be kept and who he thinks he can still get something out of. And that's the really exciting thing for me as well.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of want to point out and key on is when Ed Donatel was first hired, everybody was high on Ed Donatel. He said all the right things. The difference between him and Brian Flores is nobody really knew who Ed Donatel was when we hired Ed Donatel. Right. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't know who Ed Donatel was until his name started coming up, and I did some research and showed he worked with Fangio and blah, 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 blah. But Brian Flores, we have proof with our own eyes how his defense improves year in and year out, and how his team as a head coach improves year in and year out. So we have visual proof right in front of us showing that Brian Flores can turn this defense around. He has the capability of turning this defense around. Ed Donatel didn't necessarily have the visuals of showing, hey, this is what I do with defenses. I think he's actually the defensive coordinator for the Falcons some years back, and they're actually a terrible defense. So it kind of fell in line with Ed Donatel's defenses. But if you want to look at Brian Flores' track record and his resume, his defenses improve every single year. So I don't expect anything less from this Minnesota Vikings defense in 2023. Just off the simple fact that we've seen it from Brian Flores. But one thing I do want to point out with these comments, Drop Shot Jake says, best thing Brian Flores said in the press conference when asked if we are going to run a 4-3 or a 3-4, and he said, "Who are we playing?"
That was a beautiful line.
Beautiful line. That was the line of the press conference, in my opinion. That's exactly what we wanted to hear as a fan base. That's exactly what the media wanted to hear as Vikings media. He said, let me say it again. If we're going to run a 4-3 or 3-4, and he said, who are we playing? And on top of that, he said, it's going to be a 3-4. 3-4 is going to be our base defense. We're not getting away from the 3-4, but it's going to be game plan specific. So if a 3-4 isn't very effective against a certain type of offense, we are not going into that game and just saying, oh, we're just going to run our normal 3-4 soft shell defense. We're going to make adjustments, and we're going to go into that game and provide the best defense against a certain offense and put our players in the best position to be successful. So with that comment right there, Justin, I mean, obviously, exactly what we wanted to hear.
Right. It's one of those deals where it's hard to lose the opening press conference. It's like pretty much every coach in every sport. Well, they certainly won the news conference when they were introduced. It's kind of one of those deals where it's kind of like if you're a Power 5 conference team in college football and week 1 you're playing some cupcake football team. Well, you're supposed to beat that team. Okay, you're supposed to beat them 52-0.
Yep.
But having said that, yes, that is exactly what needed to be said, and it is exactly what needed to be heard, because that's the whole Bill Belichick thing. You know, he came in here way back in 2006 and the Vikings with the Williams wall. Nobody could run against those guys. And he came out and passed with Tom Brady 52 times and said, well, they can stop the run better than anybody. Why am I going to waste my time trying to run up against this defense? So specifically now with Flores, he's saying, 3-4 is my base, but it's game plan specific. Who are we playing this week? Are we playing a team that we're going to do well running the 3-4? Then we'll do a 3-4. If it's one of those things where we might not do as well with the 3-4, okay, well, we're going to shift a little more towards the 4-3. To me, at the end of the day, too much has always been made of this 4-3, 3-4, because with so many different sub packages, offensively and defensively here now, realistically, it's it's kind of like in college basketball. Well, these are our starting 5. Okay, that's great. But who are the 5 players on the court when the game is on the line? You know what? There might be 1 or 2 guys that come off the bench at the beginning of the game for, balancing out your starting 5 versus your second unit. But when it's crunch time, these guys are on the court. These guys are on the bench. When it's crunch time, are we running 3-4, 4-3? Doesn't matter. Whatever gives us the best opportunity to win the game. And that's what I liked about this guy. I mean, he's so no nonsense. He's so straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to your point about, did anybody know who Ed Donatel was? Well, no, he was just another also-ran. No, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but he was just another one of those old school coaches that cut their teeth and been here for 30 years. If you've been in this league for 30 years, that means you were around back in 1985 when Bill Parcells was king and everybody was pretty much pert near doing the same type of thing. And the question on the table these days about coaches isn't about what system you run. It's, are you adaptable to the current climate, whether that's your players or whether that's your opponents? And Flores right now, at least today, has got it in spades. So that's, again, best possible thing he could have said to that question.
Yeah, another key point from the press conference. I'm not sure exactly what the question was. I don't have it written down here, but he did mention a lot of the guys on this roster right now are guys that he's looking for. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if he's necessarily saying that because free agency hasn't necessarily started yet, but just by him saying that, I see a lot of comments mentioning we need to go out there and get a new inside linebacker. Kendricks and Hicks have aged out. Quasi needs to let Flores get his guys via free agency and the draft. So with Flores saying that as a comment, do you necessarily think that he means it? Do we have most of the guys on this roster right now, or do we got to look more in free agency in the draft?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I know that's an easy answer, but at the same time, you know, he's not going to come in here and say, yeah, I'm going to keep like one or two of these guys, and then we just got to revamp the whole thing. You know, so he's kind of in a box, and he's kind of limited to what he can say with that. But one of the things that I had previously mentioned, one of mine was like right after the season ended and before we knew who was going to be our defensive coordinator, I figured Eric Kendricks probably has a 5% chance at best of returning to this team. I still think that the percent chance is still relatively low because unfortunately for him, again, he's got the least amount of dead cap hit. He's got the most amount of salary that can be freed up. But I can see Eric Kendricks having a role in the Flores defense that might have been a better fit for him. I'll remind people that up until last year, Anthony Barr was the guy on defense that wore the headset that got all the play calls from the defensive coordinator. Eric Kendricks had to accept that responsibility this year. So I'm not going to pretend that Eric Kendricks doesn't look old and slow and doesn't look like he hasn't lost a step, but it might have appeared from outward appearances that maybe he lost a step and a half because he's got more responsibilities that he did before. And maybe, just maybe, Flores will see somebody like Kendricks and say, you know what, I'm going to put him in a better position to succeed. Now, I'm not saying that I think now that there's a much better chance that he'll be back than he was before, but I could see the possibility slightly being there. The biggest guy to me is Harrison Smith. I am really, really looking forward to see what Harrison Smith does. I'm not going to get into too much of the salary cap and contract stuff. We can talk about that later on a different show, but just think about what Harrison Smith did in the Mike Zimmer defense. And think about all of the things that he didn't do last year with Ed Donatel. If you could just give me half, somewhere in the middle of in between those two things, then Harrison Smith will be worth keeping around. We all get into this mentality of we hang on to some of our legacy players too long. Oh, we can't get rid of Smith. We can't get rid of Thielen. We can't get rid of Harrison Smith is one of those guys where he's the exception to that because I think he's still got a lot to offer. And I think Flores has a lot to get out of Harrison Smith back to what he used to be. I'm not saying he's Troy Polamalu or Ed Reed, okay, but I still think he can be closer to the Harry the Hitman that we're used to seeing and not what we saw last year.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, from the Mike Zimmer to the Ed Donatel defense, it was like a complete 180 with how we used Harrison Smith. And the times that we actually did use Harrison Smith and the way that we are so accustomed to seeing him being used in a Mike Zimmer defense, he was successful. He was getting to the quarterback. He was getting tackles for loss. So I think the hiring of Brian Flores increases the chance of Harrison Smith being back. I think you agree with that as well. Yeah. Just because you look at Brian Flores' defenses, his safeties are extremely active.
Yeah.
Now, I think what's a bigger question now outside of the Harrison Smith is the other safety position. Now, obviously, we have Lewis Seen coming back off an injury. Cam Bynum, who had a so-so year, a lot of lows, a couple highs. So I think that other safety position is wide open. Don't forget about a guy like Josh Metellus as well, who's actually played extremely well when he's gotten the opportunity to. So I think there's a lot of questions along this defensive side of the ball, whether that be the safety position, whether that be the linebacker position, cornerbacks, edge rusher. What are we going to do with Za'Darius? Is Za'Darius coming back? Are we going to take that money and try to put it somewhere else? Because, I mean, you look at the first half of the season, Za'Darius was lights out.
Yeah, he's a man-child.
Quite possibly a defensive player of the year candidate. But that second half of the season, he was almost non-existent. So how do you look at that? How do we kind of see the other side and say, you know what, maybe we need to put this money into a younger guy that's going to last the whole season? So I think Za'Darius is a huge question on the defensive side of the ball. And then you're looking at the interior defensive line too. You need help there. We need help on every level of the defense. Every level. Edge rushers, if we keep Za'Darius Smith, we still need to go get another edge rusher. Interior defensive line, yes, we got Dalvin Tomlinson. We need another interior defensive lineman. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. So there's a lot of movement that's going to be happening just on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. So, I mean, I'll just make it kind of an easy question. I'm not going to say it's easy, but what would be the first move you see Brian Flores and the Vikings making along the defensive side of the ball? Whether that be free agency, whether that be trade, draft, what's the first move this defense makes?
Well, to clarify, Dalvin Tomlinson is a free agent, so that's one of those deals where that's going to have to be taken into account with that too. I think where you were going is that because of those void years, he does count 7.5 against the Vikings cap this coming season, whether he's here or not. But to answer your question, the first move that I would make, got to give props to Rap who put me on this, but at the same time, I also got a video on my channel that's Purple and Go for Days. It's just a 4.5-minute video. The first thing that I would do is I would call Miami and say, all right, we got this running back named Dalvin Cook, who's from that area.
Oh, wait a minute.
You got this.
Rap put up Cook for trade?
What he said, no, he said the only thing, okay, we all know how much Rap loves Dalvin Cook, but they have a defensive back, a cornerback named Xavian Howard, who has played with Flores before, and he said, I don't want to get rid of Cook, but this is the one guy that I would consider getting rid of him for. But the point is that Xavian Howard for Dalvin Cook would be a perfect trade, in my opinion, for both teams. Miami's running backs are all free agents, so they're going to spend some money anyway. We're not going to get too far into what they got going on. But the first thing I would do is I would get Miami on the phone and say, all right, what do you think of this trade? What would it take for Xavian Howard? What are you looking for him? Are you interested in Dalvin Cook? Is there some sort of move we can make? And the reason I say Xavian Howard is this. With all due respect, I don't think Patrick Peterson is going to be back on this team. We talked about some of the younger players on there. You had mentioned Lewis Seen, but let's talk about some of the other younger players. You got Cam Dantzler on the last year of his rookie contract. You got Duke Shelley, who's a free agent. And you got a Caleb Evans, who we like, but, you know, he had 3 concussions in less than 2 months last year. So we also have to take that into account, as well as, you know, what in the world are you ever going to expect to get at Andrew Booth Jr.? You bring a guy like Xavian Howard, he's immediately your number 1 cornerback. You find a way to re-sign Duke Shelley, and now your secondary is light years better than it was. You still got those issues on the defensive line. You talked about them, and that's very, very true. But if you can make a move to either get a guy like Xavian Howard and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the free agent defensive back from Pittsburgh who was with Flores last year. Somebody put it in the chat or something to remind me what that cat's name is. But you get one of those 2 guys and solidify your number 1 cornerback position. You find a way to get Duke Shelley back here as your number 2. And then those other 3 guys that I mentioned become your rotational 3 guys. Now you've got, number 1, you've got some talent there, but you've also got some roster depth there. And we saw how bad this roster depth was needed in the defensive backfield with all the injuries we took on last year. So you hope that Flores can get something out of the guys that maybe not as much as they got last year. You hope that Lewis Seen can be available back to square one. Yeah, you know, devastating injury that he suffered on special teams last year. That to me, Sutton. Yes, thanks, Dylan. Sutton, I appreciate you. But yes, that would be my first move if I'm Flores, is to say, okay, I got this guy I worked with. He had 10 interceptions in 2020 and 5 in 2021. I mean, 15 interceptions over two seasons is very, very rare these days where you get that many interceptions. So that's where I would start, because if you can solidify through one move in free agency your defensive backfield, that allows you to then focus on the draft, to focus on your defensive line, to focus on, wide receiver too, that sort of thing. But that one fell swoop move, because you're probably not going to have Dalvin Cook back on this team. I'm sorry, Rap. It's just the reality of the situation. The guy had surgery yesterday. He's already made it clear he's not taking any less money. I'm just saying that I would rather get something for somebody than to get nothing for somebody. And if you can fill a positional need, killing two birds with one stone, absolutely, that's the first move I would make.
Yeah, no, I'm looking kind of at the domino effect, and the running back position has been a big topic of conversation for me. Um, just because the cap hit is so high for Dalvin Cook. I think we all know, I think Dalvin Cook understands, I think the front office understands that it's either take a pay cut or you're going to be playing for somebody else. And it's no hard feelings. I think we say this every time. This is no hard feelings against Dalvin Cook whatsoever. But when you think of how this league is orchestrated, when you look at the teams that make Super Bowl runs, they are not investing big money into running backs. Look at the two teams that were in the Super Bowl this year. You had a team in Kansas City who had Pacheco, 7th round pick, ran absolutely tough all playoffs. Yep. You had Jerick McKinnon, an old veteran who's very cheap, who's going to be great in the passing game. He knows it, the pass blocking. He's very, very good as far as mental-wise of the game. Then you got a guy, they had Edwards-Helaire, but Edwards-Helaire got injured, so they're running with those two running backs, but they're not investing very much money in those running backs. You look on the other side with the Philadelphia Eagles, they have Kenneth Gainwell. They have guys Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, who is a free agent this year, who the Philadelphia Eagles are going to let walk. So you can't sit here and expect to be a team that's going to go far in the playoffs, but you're dropping $14, $15 million on a running back, and you're a pass-first offense. It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense whatsoever. So I look at the free agent running backs right now. If we bring up free agent running backs, obviously Dalvin would be going, if we somehow make that trade, he'd be going to Miami, which Miami, I think you brought this to my attention. All the running backs are free agents. They don't have a running back on the roster right now, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That is correct, yep.
So they need a running back. Dalvin would be perfect for that offensive scheme, as you saw Christian McCaffrey in the 49ers offensive scheme this past season. Be perfect transition. Now, obviously, most of you guys know I want us to re-sign Alexander Madison. He's very familiar with the system already has a year under his belt, familiar with the culture in this locker room. Everybody loves Alex. But when you look at the entire free agent class for running backs, it's deep.
Yeah.
It's extremely deep. And the reason for that is because teams aren't going to spend money on these running backs when they can go out and grab a 7th rounder like Isaiah Pacheco, who's going to run hard for you in the playoffs and all year long. So, again, this is not a shot at Dalvin Cook whatsoever. But when you look at the NFL landscape in a whole and what these contending teams do as far as constructing a team, they aren't dumping that much money into a running back. Dalvin Cook is a special player, very special player. But at the running back position, it gets to a certain point in time where it's like, okay, we got to get rid of him and get what we can before we're not going to get anything at all. Right. So if you can go out there and grab Xavian Howard for Dalvin Cook, and I think it's going to take another pick too, because the Dolphins will be taking on that $14 million cap hit this year. And I think he has 1 or 2 more years remaining on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's going to take another pick. It'll probably take a 4th round pick to go along, maybe a 5th round pick to go along with that. But I'm all for it. If you can make that happen, make it happen. And on top of that, Xavian Howard's cap hit is only like $1 million this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's another thing that I detailed in the short that I did. So the quick version of it is this: Miami is probably going to ask for some additional draft compensation, because if they were to make this move, they would be taking on a pretty significant dead cap hit because of his Xavian Howard's prorated signing bonus. Now, what the Dolphins would get back now, mind you, Dalvin Cook's cap number this year for the Vikings currently does sit at $14 million, but it would actually only be $10.4 million because the Vikings would keep some of Dalvin Cook's prorated salary bonus. So it's a lot of complications with
not too bad
bonuses, but at the same time, for the Vikings, if you were to trade Dalvin Cook, you're going to take on some dead cap hit, but you're going to lose his salary, and you're only taking 1.1 from Xavian Howard. Now, yes, Xavian Howard is then under contract for 3 more years at 15.5, 13.5, and closer to 16 the next 3 years after that. But very little of that money is guaranteed. The only portion of Xavian Howard's contract that's guaranteed is a $3 million roster bonus that is due March 20th of each season. So if the Vikings were to be able to pull off a move for a guy like that, they would have him literally as a rental player every single year, and every year they can decide to keep him or they can decide to say, hey, thanks, but no thanks, it didn't work out. So they would not be locking themselves into this huge salary cap commitment. My suggestion was, all right, you take him for 1 year, and if he succeeds and it's like, okay, yeah, this guy still got it, he can be our corner number one for the next 3 years, and you renegotiate his contract and give him some more guaranteed money, well, then you've seen him for a season and you know he's worth that at that point. But it is a very cap-friendly contract for a team that would trade for it in Xavian Howard, which is part of the reason why. Now, getting back to Dalvin Cook, yes, he's still a very, very good running back. I believe Rapp has pointed out that he's like number 6 in rushing in the entire NFL. The Miami system is a derivation of the Shanahan/Kubiak system. So as you pointed out a moment ago, Dalvin Cook would fit in immediately with that Miami run game. Playing alongside Tua Tagovailoa would create a lot of interesting matchups, to say the least, defensively for their opponents. Obviously, again, it doesn't have much to do from a business standpoint, but yes, that is where Dalvin Cook is from. So I know that he would absolutely be on board with playing back down there in Miami. But to your point, this running back free agency core that are going to be available, whoever signs Alexander Madison, whether it's the Vikings or otherwise, is going to get steal. You remember when the Vikings in 2017, after they got rid of Adrian Peterson and signed and drafted Dalvin Cook, they signed a guy by the name of Latavius Murray, and they signed him for pennies on the dollar, which is was a godsend with Cook getting hurt that year. But he didn't take up all that much. The Raiders said, you know what, we're not going to give you a second contract. Latavius Murray came here for $4 million a year. That is, and I'm not saying $4 million is the number because obviously inflation and whatnot, that was 5-6 years ago. But my point is somebody is going to get a Latavius Murray type in Alexander Madison, and it's not going to cost them the same amount of money it's going to cost a Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara and all the rest of the top end free agents that are going to be on this list here. So I could still see a scenario where, if Alexander Madison tested out the waters and realized he wasn't going to get anything better, that maybe he would come back here for, less than what he was hoping to get. I could see that. I'm not holding my breath. But for right now, to answer the question of how to improve this defense right away, that's the move that I would make. And I'm sticking to it until it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, touching on the Alexander real quick, because I'm not going to sit here and talk about the running back position all day. You can get Alexander Madison at a very cheap price compared to Dalvin Cook. Now, he wants to get paid, but the biggest thing for Alexander Madison is he wants to be a starter.
Yes.
That's it. He wants to be a starter, and it's no shot at Dalvin Cook or Dalvin's taking his touches or anything. He just wants the opportunity to show what he can do.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing for Alex is if you come to Alexander Madison, you make this trade with Dalvin Cook and get a Xavian Howard. If you come to Alexander Madison and say, hey, we want you back. You're going to be our starter. I want to sign you, $2 million per year, which that is his market value right now is $2 million per year for the next 2-3 years. Why not? You're saving that. That saves you $8 million of cap hit after the prorate that you have to give Dalvin Cook. That saves you $8 million at the running back position. And you still got a young guy in Kane and Ty Chandler behind him who you can put in the mix and actually give them touches throughout the season. So I think that would be the dream scenario as far as saving money, still maintaining a run game that can be productive, because let's be honest, I know Dalvin Cook rushed for over 1,000 yards this year, but half of the season that run game was just stagnant. He was running into a brick wall. So it gets to a point where it's okay, can't pay you $14 million. I'm sorry. No. So I think that's the dream scenario. Bring back Alexander Madison. He already knows the system. He's been in the system for a year now. Give him the starting running back position. Give him $2 million per year, and then mix in Ty Chandler, Kane, and Wangu. And then you go and draft another young running back to throw in the mix. I think that's the best possible scenario as far as the running back position goes. Now let's talk a little draft, man. Just a tiny little draft.
Yes.
We're not gonna get too much into it because we are a little ways out. But I guarantee you, Purple and SKOL'd Media will be having all your draft coverage. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. But I think it's McShay's latest mock draft. It has the Minnesota Vikings taking At number 23, Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC and formerly of Pittsburgh. What do you think about that? Would that be the right decision to go wide receiver in the first round?
I don't think it would be.
It's a need. It's a need.
It is, but I would rather. There's part of me that would love finding a second wide receiver that could absolutely blow the top off of defense, particularly alongside Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. Yeah. There's part of me that would say, you know what? Your offense is your better unit. Let's just completely load up on the offense and make the offense like not just a top 10 offense, but a top 5 offense. And then we'll do the rest that we can with the defense. I can see that. I don't know. If I'm going to go offense, as ridiculous as this is, there's part of me that would
where you're going. I know where you're going.
Where am I going?
Center.
I would rather fix the interior of the offensive line. So if you told me option A was taking the wide receiver at 23, or option B is trading back to say 29, 30, or maybe the first couple picks in the second round, and still being able to get one of the top 2 centers on this in this draft, and then pick up some additional draft capital, I'm still slightly leaning towards option B. But having said that, if it was Addison, I'm not going to be like pissed off. Like, I can't believe we took that guy, blah, 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 blah. I remember when and again, this is a ridiculous analogy, but it happened. I remember how pissed off people were in 1998 that we took a receiver and not a defensive back. Because, cornerbacks were just the hugest weakness on the Vikings at that particular time. It worked out halfway decent, if I recall correctly. But no, I'd be fine. I'd be fine with him. Like I said, I don't know that that's the best utilization of the minimal 5 draft picks that you have. Like I said, I'm not expecting Kwesi or hoping that Kwesi goes full Rick Spielman on it and just continuously trades back. But you did give up some of your draft capital to get TJ Hawkinson, and you don't have a lot going into it. You got 4 picks right now and most likely a 5th compensatory pick, and you got a lot of needs on here. So that would be kind of using the 23rd pick for luxury versus need. But you know what? Yeah. It would be fun to see a second wide receiver that has somewhat close to JJ's skill level, and then just letting Kirk Cousins let it loose. I wouldn't be upset by it. I don't think that's the route they would go, but I would not be upset by it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at it either. Obviously, that's a need, and then you're bringing in another wide receiver on a rookie contract, which we know wide receivers, it's an expensive position. We're going to find that out really soon with Justin Jefferson. So if you're able to bring in another young wide receiver on a rookie contract, KJ Osborne has 1 more year on his contract. I think that would be wise to do if you're able to do that, because that sets you up for the future to have a guy with Justin Jefferson, another young wide receiver that can kind of come up under him. But no, I'm on the same route as you, and I wasn't feeling this way until after the Super Bowl, and I'll tell you why. Watching what Creed Humphrey did for the Kansas City Chiefs in that Super Bowl, and how important he was at the center position, just playing against that defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles, who they allowed 0 sacks to a team that had the 3rd most sacks in a season all time. 70 sacks, to allow 0 in the Super Bowl with a banged up Patrick Mahomes. That started with Creed Humphrey. If Creed Humphrey wasn't the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs, they wouldn't have won that Super Bowl.
Right.
I can promise you that. And I know it sounds crazy because it's a center position. It's not, quote unquote, as important as a wide receiver or a tackle or a defensive end. That position for that game against that Philadelphia Eagles team was more important than any other position outside of Patrick Mahomes.
You are correct. I mean, you could argue Travis Kelce, but your point is well seen, that was the difference maker. I was utterly surprised when I looked at the box score on Monday and saw that neither team registered a quote-unquote sack. Yes,
0.
Jalen Hurts was officially credited with taking a sack on a scramble that he ran out of bounds and behind the line of scrimmage. But a sack in the traditional sense of either a strip sack or the quarterback being tackled behind the line of scrimmage did not happen at all in this game. So it goes into 2 points, talking about having a mobile quarterback and definitely talking about having an incredible offensive line. Both of those centers in that Super Bowl, I mean, you take either one of those guys over. Well, there's a lot of guys you take over Bradbury, but my point is that it's time to recognize that as much as we talk about the quarterback position and whether you need a young, cheap quarterback or a scrambling quarterback or a running quarterback, you still got to build your offensive line. The offensive line is what makes a quarterback. We can have all the skills in the world, have all the talent in the world, but you need to have an offensive line, and that is something that absolutely needs to be something that they do. So, yes, I know I'm biased, and I would love to see John Michael Schmitz from the University of Minnesota here. I've seen the kid play, so I am admittedly biased. But even beyond that, even if it was the center out of Wisconsin, I'd be okay with that guy too. Either one of those two guys, I think, could make a world of difference, not only for Kirk Cousins, but also the running game as well. But to your point about the Super Bowl, the offensive lines were beyond reproach. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, those were the two best centers in the league, right?
Yeah, I absolutely. I don't see how you can say otherwise. I mean, those guys. I mean, nobody came. I mean, yeah, there were a couple plays here or there, and that Patrick Mahomes scramble in the last drive was insanity because, you know, he did get flushed from the pocket. But by and large, you did not see either one of those quarterbacks get flushed. Heck, the play that Jalen Hurts fumbled that got returned for a touchdown was a design run. It wasn't hey, they came out of blitz and they made him flush the pocket. No, it was a design run. So
there was no one near him when he fumbled it.
I mean, he literally just butterfingered it. And that's just literally all there was to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, perfect scenario would be if you were able, like you said, if you're able to trade back, whether that be later on in the first or out of the first, and still grab one of those centers. That would be great. That would be perfect for this team. I think we are going to trade back. I think we're going to trade out of the first round altogether. I just kind of have that feeling right now, and I don't want to get into this conversation, but I think that goes hand in hand with the quarterback position, and I think we're going to try and stockpile future picks, whether that's us trading out of the first round and trying to grab a first-round pick in a future draft. I think Kwesi may have something up his sleeve this draft. I may be completely wrong. He may trade up for all I know.
That would be rather interesting to say the least.
Yeah, so I
the only thing I'll say to that is I don't want it to be one of those where we move back 20 picks and then we don't get enough value. I mean, if you move back 6 or 7 picks, okay, fine, I'm cool with that. Or if you move back 10 or 12 picks, but you pick up a first next year, okay, I'm cool with that. When you move back from 12 to 32 and you still gave away your own second-round pick, I've said this a few times, and you didn't get, the Lions' first-round pick this year, which means we would have had 2 right now. He left some money on the table. If you want to trade back, that's fine, but don't be leaving money on the table. We don't have enough money to spare right now. To say the least.
Now credit to Kwesi. He may have known something, but Detroit's first-round pick isn't the greatest first-round pick this year. What is it, like 20th or something like that?
It'd be somewhere around 18 to 20. I'll look it up.
Yeah, 18 to 20.
But having said that, I'd still rather have that than not. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. He left the money out on the table. And that's, like I said, you make a few moves back and you pick up a second or third. Okay. You move a handful, a dozen picks back. You pick up a first next year. That's fine. I just don't want to see a move of 20 slots like we had last year. That was just too much if you ask me.
Yeah, no, you got to get a first round pick back in return if you're moving that far back. But I don't think we'll be moving that far back this season. I think we do move back, but not that far back.
Detroit has 18 for the record, so yeah, you were right.
18. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're decent pick. All right, pick, I guess. But yeah, man, anything you want to lead about? I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to touch on today. I was trying to just make it a little lunch break thing, but it looked like we went a little longer than that.
That's always what happens. That's always what happens on with this group on this network that you've put together. Is hey, we're just going to come out for about a 20-minute hit. Yeah, 45 minutes. Get back to work and all that good stuff. No, I mean, like I said, I was very excited, and again, I'm not going to read too much into it because, like I said, every new coach generally wins the press conference, other than Brad Childress. Maybe he didn't exactly win his. But having said that, I'm excited, and I'm excited to see the direction that this team goes in. It's right now on February the 15th, mind you, now the new league starts in 4 weeks, and pretty much all of teams are going to have to make their choices because roster bonuses come into play on, I think it's either the 18th or the 20th this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So roster bonuses, when you look at all of these sites like Over the Cap and Spotrax and everything else, when you're talking about, well, if this player was traded or cut, this is what their salary cap hit. That does not take into account roster bonuses. It does take into account signing bonuses, but not roster bonuses. So a lot of movement is going to happen with these players. That's why Derek Carr was released, because he was about to get a guaranteed. He was about to hit a roster bonus and all this other stuff. The next 4 weeks are going to be incredibly, incredibly fun, because you're going to have we're now going to start to see a clear picture of what direction this team's going to go. Which of these players are they going to hang on to? Which of these players are they going to renegotiate with? And which of these players are they just going to have to say goodbye to? I'm really interested to know what the resolution to the Adam Thielen situation is, not because I want him to stay or go one way or the other. I just want what is best for this team, and let's be realistic about what he can offer. So I'm very, very excited. Keep it tuned to Purple and SKOL'd Media, as well as the family of channels. Mine is Purple and Gold for days. We all know Rap is Purple Pocket Podcast, Dave of Minnesota Sports Talk, and G&G Sports with Jamie and Casey, and a few others that haven't been announced yet. A couple of other people coming in here. I ain't going to be the one to say it, SK. I don't know when it's official.
Yeah, keep your eyes and your ears open, guys. We got a lot of big announcements coming. And if you don't already, like I said at the beginning of the video, be sure to subscribe to the Purple and SKOL'd Media YouTube channel, and as well on Facebook, too. Those are going to be the 2 main platforms that we're on. We're still working on the Instagram and the Twitter, but those are the 2 main platforms we will be on. So be sure to go like and subscribe to those pages and those platforms. We always appreciate your guys' support. The new logo will be dropped in the next couple days. So we got that big announcement coming. We might even do a giveaway. We might even do a little giveaway. So be on the lookout for that. I do got some signed memorabilia that I just feel like giving away. So be sure to subscribe, like the channel. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. It is your boy SK with Justin Day. This is Purple and SKOL'd Media. Purple and Gold for days with Justin Day. Have a good one, guys. Brian Flores, new Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator.
Aggressive, aggressive, aggressive.
Aggressive, aggressive, aggressive.